Imagine standing in a busy marketplace when suddenly a police officer abuses her power, not just with words but with pure humiliation. A black woman is targeted in front of everyone, but what happens next will leave the entire crowd stunned. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing our community spread across the globe. And make sure you like this video and subscribe right now so you never miss tomorrow's story. Trust me, you won't want to. Saturday markets turned Jefferson Square into a whirlwind. Speakers thumped Afrobeats beside a blues guitarist, steam rose from jollof pots, scooter bells chimed, and vendors sang prices with the rhythm of auctioneers. Naya Okoye slipped through the flow with a tote full of skincare jars and a collapsible table under one arm. She wore a yellow sundress, crisp white sneakers, and a silver necklace shaped like the state she called home. Her sister had texted before dawn, "Sell out, come home early, I'm making you goosey." Naya smiled at the thought and quickened her pace. She reached her usual corner brick wall to the back, shade from an elm above, constant foot traffic to the front, and popped the table open with a practiced flick. Labels faced outward, scents in neat rows: shea citrus, hibiscus rose, mint clove. A girl of about 7 drifted over, sniffed the air and beamed. "What's your favorite?" Naya asked. "The pink one," the girl said. "Hibiscus rose," Naya said. She dabbed a fingertip of butter on the girl's wrist. "Tell your mom it's on me today." The girl skipped away, showing the shimmer to her mother. Naya breathed in the square's life, laughter, bargaining, a street drummer testing his sticks against empty buckets. She unrolled her banner. Naya Naturals in bold hand-painted strokes. A squad car nosed along the curb, slow enough to be noticed, fast enough to feel impatient. Inside sat Officer Kelsey Brandt, jaw tight, sunglasses mirrored like cold water. She cut the engine and stepped out, hands on her vest as if reminding the city that they existed. She scanned the vendors, then fixed on Naya's bright banner like a target. "Permits," Brandt said, stopping in front of the table. Naya's smile didn't break. "Good morning, officer. Here you go." She produced a laminated card from a zip pouch and set it down so it didn't flutter. Brandt didn't pick it up. "Step back from the table." "Sure," Naya said, taking one easy step. "Farther." Naya moved again. The drummer paused. Nearby conversations thinned, curiosity spreading quicker than smoke. Brandt lifted the permit between 2 fingers, peered over the edge of her glasses, and made a show of reading. "Who signed this?" "City Clerk Morales," Naya answered. "Renewed last month." Brandt flipped the card as if checking for counterfeit marks. "You selling food, skincare, all labeled, ingredients on the back, same spot every Saturday." Brandt sniffed one jar without touching it. "Smells like food. It's cocoa butter." The officer glanced at the tote, the cash box, the tidy display. Her attention snagged on the necklace at Naya's throat. "Where'd you get that?" "My sister gave it to me," Naya said. "Why?" "No reason," Brandt said, tone making reason sound like problem. She waved the laminated permit as if swatting a fly. "Step away from the table, hands where I can see them." The words were loud enough to cross the square. Heads turned. A vendor killing coconuts with a cleaver paused mid-strike. Phone cameras rose like new flowers after rain. Naya raised her palms. "Officer, I'm cooperating. Please don't escalate." "Don't give me instructions," Brandt snapped. She set the permit down but kept her foot on the corner of Naya's banner, pinning it to the brick. "You match a description." "Of what?" Brandt didn't answer. She reached for the cash box. Naya flinched, then caught herself and froze. "You cannot touch my money without cause," Naya said, voice steady. "That's my livelihood." Brandt smiled without warmth. "This is an investigatory contact. Cause is my judgment until a supervisor says otherwise." A young man in a denim jacket slid closer with his phone up, live stream already humming. "We're watching, officer." "Just so you know." "Back up," Brandt shot. "This is police business." A busker with a battered violin stopped tuning. A grandmother pushed a cart of mangoes between 2 gawking college kids and whispered, "Keep space. Let the angels stand close." Brandt opened the cash box, rifled the bills with 2 gloved fingers, then snapped the lid shut. "Receipts. I keep digital records," Naya said. She held up her phone, the square's glare flashing across the cracked protector. "I can show you last week's sales." "Unlock it," Brandt ordered. "No warrant, no unlock," said someone from the crowd. A chorus murmured agreement. Brandt's eyes flicked left, then right. Her hand settled on the radio at her shoulder. "Dispatch, Unit 12 at Jefferson Square. Vendor verification and crowd forming. Send another unit." Naya fought the heat building under her ribs. "Officer," she tried again, carefully. "My permit is valid. You have it in your hand. If you need a supervisor, I'll wait. But please step off my banner. You're crushing my sign." Brandt didn't move. "Kneel." The word fell like a metal object. Even the drummer sucked in air. Naya blinked. For what? So I can pat you down, Brandt said, as if reading lines from a script only she could see. Hands on your head. A hush rolled outward from the table. The violinist lowered his bow. The kid with the live stream whispered, "She told her to kneel, y'all." Comments exploded across his screen. Naya glanced around and found faces, worried, angry, stunned. She set her jaw. "I'm not a threat. I'm not armed. You have no reason to humiliate me." Brandt stepped closer, shadow falling across jars of hibiscus rose. "Kneel." "No," Naya said. The officer's mouth became a thin line. She grabbed Naya's left wrist and twisted. Naya gasped, bent at the waist to ease the jolt, then straightened by force of will. "Stop," she said, voice breaking into steel. "You're hurting me." Phones multiplied. A cyclist tossed down his bike and planted himself between the nearest stroller and the confrontation. The grandmother with mangoes parked her cart like a barricade. Eyes on her hands, she told the college kids. Truth comes from details. A siren whined somewhere near. Brandt angled Naya toward the brick wall. "Hands behind your back." "On what charge?" Naya demanded. "Obstruction." "Obstruction of standing at my table?" "Obstruction of a lawful order," Brandt said. She reached for cuffs. A baritone voice cut through the square. "Officer." Brandt half-turned, keeping one hand locked on Naya's wrist. A tall man in a gray windbreaker stepped from the crowd, palms visible, expression calm, eyes unblinking. He carried no signs, wore no hat, and moved with the deliberateness of people who expect to be heard. A small lapel pin glinted, two hands cupped like a bowl. "Who are you?" Brandt asked, annoyed at the interruption. "Someone accountable for what happens on this block," he said. "Release her arm." Brandt's chin rose. "Step away." He did not step. He took out a wallet, flipped it open for 3 seconds, long enough for Brandt to see, short enough for the crowd to stay curious. Her jaw twitched. "Supervisor?" she asked, uncertain. "Keep your radio on," he replied, "and keep your voice low. This square is already an amplifier." He looked at Naya, then at the cash box, the crushed edge of the banner under Brandt's boot, the wall, the phones, the child peeking from behind mangoes. He catalogued the scene like a medic triaging a pileup. "Naya Okoye," he said, as if he already knew her name. "Take a breath." She did, and it wasn't enough, so she took another. The pain in her wrist softened by a degree. "Officer Brandt," the man said, "you'll remove your foot from her property. You'll loosen your grip, and you'll state your reasonable suspicion plainly, so these witnesses understand your choices." "Don't teach me my job," Brandt snapped, but her boot lifted a fraction. The man's voice did not rise. "The difference between control and service is posture. Fix yours." The siren grew loud, then cut as a second patrol car slid to the curb. Doors opened. 2 officers approached, hands open, eyes flicking between radios and faces. The crowd widened a path without being told, as if some unseen conductor had drawn a baton through the air. Brandt hesitated. Pride wrestled with protocol, neither kind, both fierce. She looked at the new arrivals, then back at the man with the lapel pin. "Say your name," she demanded. He smiled without showing teeth. "I will for the report. For now, act like every lens belongs to your grandmother." Laughter rippled, nervous and grateful at once. The tension didn't burst, it exhaled a notch. Brandt released Nia's wrist. Circulation tingled back like fizzing soda. Nia swallowed anger's iron and stood tall, not moving her hands, not taunting the moment, just meeting eyes. Around them, the market's heartbeat faltered, waiting for the next beat. The man in the windbreaker lifted his chin slightly, a cue only the disciplined see. One of the arriving officers nodded back, then addressed the square. "Folks, step back so we can talk. We'll sort this clean." The drummer tapped a rim, soft as rain. The violinist lifted his bow. Mangoes glowed like lanterns in a world that felt suddenly dimmer. The man turned to Nia again. "You okay to speak?" "I'm okay," she said, voice low but steady. "Good," he said. "Then let's make the record right, out loud from the start." He faced the growing ring of phones and faces, and opened his mouth to do something that would turn the square into a witness stand, and then into something else entirely. The second patrol car's lights still blinked across Jefferson Square like restless eyes. People shifted but didn't leave. Vendors whispered behind stacked crates. Parents kept kids close, yet no one dared break the circle. The tension had soaked into the bricks and hung in the air like heavy humidity. Officer Kelsey Brandt stood stiff, sunglasses reflecting every phone screen raised against her. Her grip had released Nia, but her posture still carried the weight of defiance. The tall man in the gray windbreaker remained calm, steady as a lamppost that refused to bend to the storm. The younger of the arriving officers, badge-reading Ortiz, spoke carefully. "Ma'am, what's the situation?" Brandt's jaw tightened. Vendor matched a suspect description. Non-compliance during lawful orders. Ortiz's eyes flicked from Nia, standing with hands still half raised, to the overturned skincare jars scattered when Brandt twisted her wrist. He saw no threat, only bruised dignity. The older officer, Sergeant Rivers, took a step closer to Brandt. His voice was quiet but carried weight. "Kelsey, let's lower this," Brandt muttered. "I had control until—" She stopped, glaring at the tall man. The man spoke finally, voice level. "Control isn't the same as justice." Phones leaned in. Viewers online typed furiously, comments racing. "Who is he? That cop is finished. Stay strong, sis." Nia rubbed her wrist, feeling the pulse return. She looked around at the faces surrounding her. Students, elders, tourists who had just wanted roasted corn. They weren't leaving. They wanted to see how this ended. "Officer Ortiz," Nia said, steadying her voice, "my permit is valid. It's right there on the table." The officer, she did not say Brandt's name, stepped on my sign, went through my cash, and demanded I kneel. Gasps rippled outward. The words "demanded I kneel" struck deeper than anything else. Sergeant Rivers turned to Brandt sharply. "Is that accurate?" Brandt bristled. "I followed procedure for officer safety." "No," the tall man interrupted, his tone still calm but cutting. "You escalated for dominance, not safety. Words matter, officer." Every ear here heard them. The live streamer zoomed in on Brandt's face. Comments flooded. "Fire her now," she said. "Kneel? Unbelievable." Brandt's cheeks flushed under the sunglasses. "This crowd doesn't get to judge my conduct." "Crowds don't," the tall man said, "but communities do, and so do cameras." Ortiz knelt beside Nia's table, picking up a jar and reading the label. He held up the laminated permit. "Sergeant, it checks out. City Clerk Morales, stamped and signed." Rivers exhaled slowly. He motioned to Nia. "Miss Okoye, thank you for your patience. You're clear to continue your business." Applause erupted. Not wild, but firm and rhythmic, the sound of people agreeing with truth. Brandt's shoulders stiffened. She looked at the man in the windbreaker again. "You think you can embarrass me in my precinct?" His expression never shifted. "You embarrassed yourself. I only reminded you of the cost." For the first time, a flicker of recognition crossed Brandt's face. She leaned closer, voice a harsh whisper, but microphones picked it up anyway. "You're Reverend Elias, aren't you?" Murmurs rose, people repeating the name, some with awe, others with dawning realization. The livestream's comment section exploded. Nia blinked. She'd heard the name before, a pastor known for calming riots, for speaking in city halls, for testifying in hearings that made lawmakers shift in their seats. A man who once refused police escort in a foreign country, choosing instead to walk with villagers through floodwaters. Reverend Elias inclined his head slightly. "Names don't matter, actions do." The crowd swelled with murmurs. "That's him, the global pastor. I saw him on the news. Is this real?" Brandt faltered for just a second. "You had no right." "I had every right as a citizen," Elias said, voice carrying over the entire square, "to stand against humiliation in a public place. And I had every duty as a servant of God to make sure justice didn't choke here today." The applause turned into cheers. Someone shouted, "Amen." Another, "Tell it." Nia lowered her hands at last, shoulders trembling but chin high. The crowd wasn't just with her, they were behind her. She turned to Elias. "Thank you." He nodded once, then addressed the officers. "Take her report properly, and take yours too. Paper trails are louder than fists." Rivers gave a curt nod, already pulling out a notepad. Ortiz offered Nia a seat on a low wall to rest. People gathered around her, shielding her from the harsh stares of the officer who had tried to crush her spirit. Brandt stood frozen, the weight of every eye pinning her more firmly than her own boot had pinned the banner. For the first time, the badge on her chest looked less like authority and more like a spotlight she couldn't turn off. The market began to breathe again. Vendors reopened jars, lifted trays, struck drums, but no one would forget what they had witnessed. And as Reverend Elias moved through the crowd, speaking softly to some, nodding at others, people realized this was no accident. They had all just become part of a story that was bigger than Jefferson Square. Something had shifted, and it would not shift back. The square pulsed with restless energy long after Sergeant Rivers closed his notepad. Vendors resumed selling, yet the air still trembled with what had just happened. Every conversation carried the echo. She told her to kneel. That man stopped her cold. Wasn't that Reverend Elias? Nia sat on the low stone wall, her wrist throbbing where Officer Brandt had twisted it. Ortiz crouched nearby, voice gentle. Her eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the faces that had stood for her. "What I want is my dignity back." Reverend Elias appeared at her side, hands folded calmly. "You never lost it," he said softly. "They only tried to take it." Nia swallowed hard. "You don't even know me." He met her eyes. I know injustice, that's enough. The live streamer, phone still up, edged closer. Reverend, do you want to say something to the people watching? You've got thousands tuned in right now. Elias hesitated, then shook his head. Not yet. Let the truth breathe first. But truth didn't get much time to breathe. From the far side of the square came a new chant, sharp, angry voices cutting through the noise. A small group of counter-protesters had arrived, waving blue and black flags and shouting slogans about law and order. Their words weren't for Naya. They were aimed like darts at the crowd itself. Support the badge. One bellowed. Comply or cry, another sneered. The energy shifted fast. People who had clapped for Naya turned defensive, crowding closer to her table. The mango-selling grandmother parked her cart squarely between the groups like a barricade. Ortiz reached for his radio. We've got incoming tension, requesting crowd control units. Sergeant Rivers frowned. No riot gear. We'll handle this soft. But Brandt was already striding toward the counter-protesters, not to calm them but to greet them. She nodded at one of the men as if they were allies, not agitators. The sight made several witnesses gasp. Look at her, someone shouted. She's encouraging them. Cameras swung to catch the handshake, Brandt clasping palms with a man holding a bullhorn. The live-stream chat exploded. She's siding with them. This is insane. How is this happening live? Elias's calm broke for the first time. He stepped forward, voice booming across the square. Officer Brandt. She turned, chin high, defiance plain. I'm maintaining order. You're feeding disorder, Elias said. Look at their signs, their chants. They didn't come for safety, they came to inflame. Brandt smirked. Free speech, Reverend. Or do you only like it when it praises you? A ripple of anger surged through the onlookers. Voices rose, shouts clashing with chants. The violinist who'd watched earlier now raised his bow and played a single trembling note, hoping to soften the air. It was drowned out. Naya stood, hand on her table for balance. Enough, she shouted. Her voice carried more than she expected. The crowd hushed for a heartbeat, surprised. She pointed at Brandt. You humiliated me. You hurt me. And now you invite more humiliation by siding with them? We see you. The counter-protesters booed, but the larger crowd cheered. Brandt's face twisted. You people think you can put me on trial in a marketplace? You put yourself here, Elias said, stepping closer. His tone had returned to steady, but the fire in his eyes burned now. This isn't your court. This is community. And community doesn't forget. The bullhorn man tried to shout over him, but the crowd drowned him out with a chant of their own. Justice, justice. Brandt gripped her radio. Dispatch, situation escalating. Request, Rivers grabbed her wrist firmly. That's enough. You're off this scene. Step back. You can't bench me, she snapped. I just did, Rivers said, steel in his tone. Brandt's face flushed red, but she backed away, spitting curses under her breath. She retreated toward her cruiser, slamming the door so hard the window rattled. The crowd erupted in cheers, but the counter-protesters didn't leave. They pressed closer, jeering. Ortiz and Rivers moved to hold the line, palms open, voices calm, but tension rippled like a storm about to break. In the middle of it all, Elias raised his arms. Silence, he thundered. His voice carried like a bell over the chaos. To everyone's shock, the noise dimmed. Even the counter-protesters paused, curious at the authority in his tone. Elias looked from one side to the other. This square belongs to no badge, no banner, no bullhorn. It belongs to truth, and truth will speak. He turned to Nia. Tell them, all of them, what was done to you. Nia's heart pounded. Every eye was on her, but she felt the crowd at her back, Elias at her side, and courage rising where fear had lived minutes before. She lifted her chin. She tried to make me kneel, she said, voice trembling but clear. Not for safety, for power, for humiliation, but I refused. The square erupted. Applause, shouts, some tears. The live stream's comment feed screamed, Queen energy, never kneel, stand tall, sis. The counter-protesters shouted back, but they were drowned in the roar of support. Rivers spoke into his radio. We need crowd management, but not suppression. Send community liaisons. Elias leaned close to Nia. You just gave them more than a witness. You gave them a symbol. Nia swallowed, realizing the weight now pressing on her shoulders. She hadn't wanted this role, but the square had already decided. The day wasn't finished. The crowd wasn't finished. And somewhere near the parked cruiser, Officer Brandt's glare promised this story was far from over. By afternoon, Jefferson Square had transformed from a marketplace into a stage. What had begun as a routine Saturday of music, food, and trading now buzzed with raw electricity. News vans arrived, tripods sprouting like weeds. The live streamer's feed had crossed into national trending lists. Drone cameras hovered above the square, beaming the standoff to living rooms far beyond the city. Nia stayed at her table, her jars neatly realigned, though her hands still shook. She didn't sell anything. No one expected her to. She had become the square's centerpiece. Strangers stopped to squeeze her shoulder, whisper blessings, hand her bottled water. Children stared at her as though she had grown taller. Reverend Elias moved among the crowd, speaking in quiet tones, reminding people to breathe, to stay peaceful. He checked on the mango grandmother, on the violinist, on the denim jacket live streamer, who was now hoarse from narrating. Wherever he walked, tension loosened a little, but at the curb, Officer Kelsey Brandt sat in her cruiser, fists tight on the steering wheel. Through the windshield, she watched her authority unravel, her career on the brink. She radioed dispatch twice, demanding to be reassigned, demanding backup that would shift the balance. Both times, Sergeant Rivers intercepted, firm, "Stand down, you're not in command here." Her jaw clenched. "You'll regret this," she hissed, slamming the radio back. The counter-protesters still lingered. They had multiplied, feeding off the media lights, chanting louder. Some waved crude signs, "Comply or pay," "Blue rules all." Others recorded themselves, narrating venom to their own online audiences. They weren't leaving. They wanted spectacle. Ortiz and Rivers held the line, speaking evenly to keep both sides apart. But as the afternoon shadows stretched, the chants escalated into shoves. A bottle arced from the counter-protester side and shattered near Nia's table. Shards sparkled like cruel stars on the pavement. The crowd roared. "Enough," voices shouted. Vendors closed ranks, some wielding broom handles, others just standing shoulder to shoulder. Children were pulled behind carts. Reverend Elias stepped forward, arms raised. His voice was thunder again. "Peace, not another step." But the line surged anyway, anger swelling, ready to drown the square. Nia surprised herself. She vaulted onto her stone wall seat, lifting one of her jars high. Her voice cracked but carried. "Look at this. This is what I came for. To sell butter. Not to fight. Not to bleed. Butter." She opened the jar and smeared hibiscus rose cream across her palm, then raised it, glistening under the sun. "This is who I am." And she pointed straight at Brandt's cruiser, tried to make me kneel for it. The crowd erupted, not in violence, but in a rolling chant that filled every corner of the square. "Stand tall, stand tall, stand tall." The words beat like drums. Even the violinist caught the rhythm, bowing hard across strings to add music to defiance. Brandt's face twisted behind the glass. She shoved the door open and strode back into the square, ignoring Rivers' warning shout. The chants grew louder as she approached Nia. The cameras zoomed in. "Hungry, get down from there," Brandt barked. "No," Nia said, voice steady now. "I've stood all day. I won't step down for you." Brandt's hand twitched toward her belt. Gasps rose. A child screamed. Reverend Elias moved like a shield, planting himself between them. "You will not," he said firmly. Eyes locked on hers. "This crowd is out of control," Brandt spat. "You're feeding a riot." Elias's tone sharpened. "No, you're feeding humiliation. And humiliation burns hotter than fire. Step back, officer." Rivers rushed in, gripping Brandt's arm. "That's an order. Step back now." Brandt wrenched her arm free, wild-eyed. "You're all against me. All of you." The crowd shouted back, a wall of sound. "Stand tall, stand tall." Ortiz signaled urgently for more units, but community liaisons arrived first. Elders from local churches, activists with orange vests, volunteers trained to mediate. They slipped into the fray, palms out, soothing, separating. Their presence calmed what shields and batons never could. Nia lowered her jar, still on the wall, tears streaking her face though her chin didn't drop. Elias stayed rooted beside her. Brandt, surrounded by officers and liaisons, stood alone in a storm she had created. The news anchors whispered through their microphones, narrating history as it unfolded. Commentators online debated in real time. Children clutched their parents' hands, wide-eyed, knowing they'd retell this someday. And at the very center, Nia, Elias, and Brandt locked in a triangle of defiance, faith, and fury. No one in Jefferson Square could predict what the next few hours would bring, but everyone knew one thing. This story wasn't finished. Not yet. Evening shadows draped Jefferson Square in orange and violet. Vendors packed up their tables but refused to leave. Families stayed, children perched on parents' shoulders. The entire plaza had turned into an arena of justice, with every phone still raised. Officer Kelsey Brandt stood ringed by her fellow officers, her chest heaving, eyes darting like a cornered predator. Her earlier confidence was gone. In its place was something harder, more dangerous, a refusal to yield. Sergeant Rivers faced her. calm but stern. Kelsey, enough. You've embarrassed this department and endangered this crowd. You're suspended effective immediately. Brandt's lips curled. Suspended? For doing my job? Rivers shook his head. No, for humiliating an innocent woman and igniting chaos. The crowd roared approval. Cheers cascaded across the square. But Brandt's glare remained fixed on Naya, who still stood tall atop the wall, her yellow dress glowing in the dying light. Reverend Elias stepped between them again, voice firm but carrying the softness of mercy. Officer Brandt, the badge on your chest means service, not supremacy. You tried to make her kneel, and the city watched, but dignity cannot be crushed, not hers, not anyone's. Phone zoomed in, catching every syllable. Brandt spat at the ground. You think this crowd proves anything? You think their applause makes you righteous? Elias did not flinch. No, but their witness makes you accountable. Gasps rippled as two internal affairs officers appeared, plainclothes but unmistakable. They spoke briefly to Rivers, then approached Brandt. One read from a paper. Officer Kelsey Brandt, you are relieved of duty pending investigation into conduct unbecoming, excessive force and discriminatory actions. The crowd erupted, thunderous, deafening. Chants broke out, not of anger this time, but of vindication. Justice, justice, justice. Brandt's face blanched. She tried to protest, but the weight of hundreds of voices drowned her out. She was escorted toward her cruiser, swallowed by flashing lights and jeers. When she was gone, silence fell, not the silence of fear but of reverence. All eyes turned to Naya. She swallowed hard, heart pounding. She hadn't asked to be a symbol, but the square had given her no choice. She raised her voice, cracking at first, then steady. Today I was told to kneel, but I refused, not because I'm stronger than anyone here, but because every black woman, every black man, every child deserves to stand tall. This is not just my fight, it's ours. Applause roared, rising like a wave. Tears streamed down faces in every direction. Even the counter-protesters, their chants silenced, slunk away quietly. Reverend Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. You've spoken truth into a place of pain, and truth once spoken cannot be unsaid. Reporters shoved microphones forward. Miss Okoye, what's next for you? Naya looked around at the sea of faces, at the grandmother with mangoes, at the violinist still clutching his bow, at the live streamer whose phone had carried her struggle to the world. I'll be back here next Saturday, she said, voice unwavering, selling butter, standing tall. The square exploded with cheers, the sound carrying through the city like church bells on Easter morning. Elias lifted his hand, quieting the noise just enough for one final word. Remember today, not as a fight between a woman and a badge, but as a victory for dignity. Carry it into your homes, your schools, your streets. And never forget, when one of us is told to kneel, all of us must stand. The crowd answered with a roar so loud it shook windows, a roar that belonged not just to Jefferson Square but to history. As the last light faded and stars began to prick the sky, people left reluctantly, still buzzing, still alive with the fire of what they had witnessed. And in the center of the emptying square, Naya knelt, not in submission, but to pick up a jar of hibiscus rose butter from the ground. She held it close, smiled through her tears and whispered to herself, "Stand tall.